You're listening to The Power Project. I'm your host, Brandy Voth. I also like to think that I'm your guide along this journey of purpose, which is where you will hopefully end up at the end of this podcast. I'm a mom, a wife, a daughter, a friend, an entrepreneur, an advocate in the fight against human trafficking. I wear a lot of hats, y'all, but don't we all? And most importantly, I am passionate about inspiring women to go out and lead purpose-filled lives while owning your God-given power. I have this crazy belief that we are all better when we lift each other up, which is exactly why I created this platform to spotlight other women that are leading in ministry, business, and nonprofits in the hopes that you at home will be inspired by their stories to get up and take action in order to walk in purpose and own your God-given power. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey friends, and welcome back to the Power Project podcast. Now, I really wanted to, this month, hammer down some tangible episodes for you guys where you can get some takeaways that you can go and apply to your life, because I am getting a lot of questions. I'm getting a lot of people that want to know how to start a podcast, a lot of people that want to know how to write a book, how to publish a book, how to launch a book. I'm getting questions about how to start a blog, how to start a website, how to start an online sales model, an online store, an online boutique, how to market your products, how to do email newsletters. There's a lot of things that people are asking about, and I realize that there is a need for this information to come out to my listeners and my audience. So therefore, I have taken the chance to create some really great tangible episodes with takeaways for you guys. And the International Women's Day was on the March 8th. We are now on, it's now March 12th, I believe, when this airs. And in honor of all of that, and this being Women's History Month, and this really being the birth of this platform, I wanted to break down for you guys what my timeline looked like, because oftentimes we see someone's success at the end of a journey, but we don't necessarily think about what they went through to get there, or how long it took, or we think it's an overnight success versus something that has been years of culmination. So for me personally, I started in January of 2017. I had my first really idea of knowing that my call, my purpose in life was to be speaking into people and empowering people. And I had no idea what that looked like. That's when I really felt the call to step outside of the business space I was in and apply that to a wider audience and cast a bigger net and reach more people, and just really transition with what I did in my sales business and building my sales team and training my sales team and speaking to them and helping them realize their strengths and their talents and their gifts. I knew that I also wanted to open that up to people outside of just my skincare business. I knew that I wanted to open it up to people all over and help them realize their purpose and own their power. So that was January of 2017. And then in May of 2017, I started writing the Power Project book, where I didn't even know what it was going to evolve into. I just knew that somewhere along the way, I was going to share my story and then also help others realize their own purpose in life. By November of 2017, I had this idea for this retreat, and I wanted to have a retreat for women where I could speak into them and help them realize their purpose and learn about self-care and personal development and really owning their gifts. By January of 2018, I had hosted my first Power Project retreat where we did just that. And it was beautiful. It was amazing. By March of 2018, on International Women's Day, which was March 8th, 2 years ago, this week, I launched the Power Project vlog. And what I want you guys to realize is that I literally woke up that morning, thought, I need to do something for International Women's Day. I should find a way to spotlight women in business. That was my first thought. And I kind of thought women that I was connected with in my skincare business, because there are so many incredible women there, and spotlight them and just share with the world how they've stepped out of their comfort zone. They've overcome fear. They're walking in purpose. That ended up, the idea as the day went, it literally happened in one day, like over coffee. It evolved into possibly spotlighting women that were just leading, period, in ministry, business, nonprofits, overcoming obstacles. And so I interviewed my first guest on March 8th. I kicked off the Power Project vlog, said this is going to be a platform where we spotlight women and we learn from one another. That was March of 2018. So by let's see, let me check my notes. So by September of 2018, I had launched the blog and the podcast because I realized that it needed to be a different platform, and a platform that I owned versus a platform that can get bogged down with some algorithms and what have you. And I wanted to reach as many people as I could reach, and also reach those that weren't following me on social media. I wanted a platform of people that I could speak into that didn't know me personally, that I could lift them up and encourage them. That's how we ended up here and having this conversation. And then now, March of 2020, we are publishing the Power Project book, A Journey of Purpose. I document my last 3 years from January 2017 to today of really this whole process evolving. All right, that sounds great. Once again, you're thinking, that's awesome, but I need to know how I can start my own purpose journey, how I can take action, how I can do this and answer the call and walk in purpose. So it comes down to this. We have to be willing to start small, you guys. We have to be willing to start exactly where we are, because if we start to fail the moment that we fail to start. 100%. And this is the most common failure I see with anyone on a purpose journey, is that they don't simply start the journey. You have to take action. You have to start the journey, because if you have all of these ideas that are growing in your brain, sometimes we tend to fall into a situation where we make our idea, our purpose, our calling so grand that we're afraid to start small. We're afraid to start where we are, instead of starting with that one idea and letting it grow and letting it build. And I can tell you that whether it is nonprofit founders that are friends of mine, or business owners, or advocates, or preachers, or speakers, or authors, every single person started with one idea and then let it evolve and grow into what it is today. Just like the Power Project, you guys, it is blowing my mind what is happening over here in my world. And it's because I was willing to take action. So right now, number one thing, we have to be willing to take action. That is it, right? And we have to be willing to take action on the small things. We have to be willing to say, sure, I'll do a Facebook Live video with a friend and interview her and have her share her story with my audience, and let that be my kickoff starting point, right? Then, and we have to be willing to do the small retreats, or the small events, or the small subscribers on our channel, whatever it is. We just have to be willing to start with that one mustard seed, right? And let it grow and let it multiply. So if you have these thoughts in your mind and they're rolling around, the best way to take action is to get them out of your mind. Because if you don't give them life, they are never going to come to fruition. There's two ways that you can help your thought process come from in your mind and out into the world and fully be in serving your purpose. And the first way is going to be write it down, you guys. If I had my phone on me, I keep a running list of notes in my phone with every single idea that I have. Every idea. And you guys, my mind runs like 90 miles an hour or 1,000. And I also happen to be on the Strength Finder test. I'm an achiever, an activator, a communicator, a strategist. I'm all the things that are really strong personalities that tend to generate these ideas. I know that I can't do them all at once, but if I get them out of my mind and into writing, then that's something I can revisit at any given moment, even if the time's not right at that point. So I write it down. I write down every idea I have about it. That's what I did the morning that I launched the Power Project vlog. Every single idea that surrounds that call, I put down. You can write it in a journal. You can keep a journal like this where you write ideas down, or you can keep a note in your phone. I keep a note in my phone for that reason. And then the second is that you need to tell other people about it. Because otherwise it's just something that you're holding on to and you're not proclaiming it to other people that can speak life into that can pray over that can encourage you, that can uplift you, that can hold you accountable when you don't follow through with the idea that you told them about. The ones that can say, hey, I told you to write a book. You said you're writing a book. Let's finish the book. The ones that will say, you mentioned doing a retreat. Let's do a retreat. The ones who will say, when are you launching that social enterprise hat company? All of these things, you need a trusted group of two people that are your trusted group that you can go to and say, this is my idea. Why two? Because the Bible says that where 2 or 3 are gathered, there he is. So build that community right there with your 2 or 3 of you, where you talk about this idea, you pray about this idea, you dream about this idea. And then the second step of starting small is going to be identifying your mission. You want to get really clear about why you want to do what you're doing. Okay? Like why? What is this call coming from? If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, then you're going to really want to do a deep dive into what that feels like, looks like, what you imagine it turning into. And then in that, you can determine, is this a greater calling on my life? Is this a purpose? Is this something I'm really being called to? Or is this my own dream that I'm wanting to fulfill? Is it self-serving or community serving? And either way, it's not necessarily bad. You just need to be really clear and identify what that is. Is this going to help others? And what problem are we solving? All right. So if you want to write a book, that's the first thing I tell people is if you have a story that you want to share, that's great. And people read stories, but what problem are you solving with that story? How are you helping others with that story? What are you teaching people with that story? Sometimes the story that we want to share just needs to be placed in a journal for healing, in all honesty. And sometimes it turns into airing dirty laundry rather than serving a community and helping others. So let's get really clear on identifying our mission. The third step to starting small is going to be researching the field that you are entering. So whatever this looks like, if it's an industry, if it's a creative space, I am an avid researcher to the point where I sometimes get frozen in analysis paralysis because I'm researching something rather than taking action. So don't get sideways here on that. Don't get twisted on that, but research this field and decide who is the audience within that field? Who are the people that are being served by that field? And then who is in that space already? Research the people that are there. If they're authors that are in the same genre as you, if they are bloggers, if they are YouTubers, if they are nonprofit organizations, what have you, whatever space that you're entering, let's do a lot of research on that. And let's figure out what sets you apart from others in this space. What do you uniquely bring to the table? How are your gifts and your talents going to serve this space? And don't let this turn into the comparison trap. Don't let this turn into intimidation. Don't let this feel like because other people are in this space, you can't be in this space. Because you guys, there are far more people not hearing the message that you have to deliver than there are people delivering the message. So we need more messengers. We need more doers. We need more activists. We need more. And there are people that are hungry for what it is that you have to serve them, for what it is that you are offering them, for what it is that you're being called to. And remember that if you're being called to this, there's the whole imposter syndrome that we can fall into. We talked about that in last week's episode when we were discussing anxiety. But just know that if you're being called to this cause or this purpose, that God's going to qualify you. He's going to equip you. And you're just going to have to take steps of action in order to achieve that. So the fourth step on starting small, on how we start small, on how we are able to take the idea to implementation, is going to be truly starting where you are. This looks like not waiting for everything to look perfect before you start. This looks like not waiting for the perfect time to start. Looks like not knowing everything before you start. Not waiting for everything to be perfectly orchestrated and perfectly scheduled before you start. It truly is about progress over perfection. So one example is that I've written a book. It took me 2.5 years to write the book. And then there's been another 6 months of editing and approving and designing. And I'm so every time I read it, I get excited and I can't wait for you guys to read it. But I'll be honest, I'm kind of done reading it myself because I've read it to where it's become redundant. If I'm not practicing what I preach, or if I wasn't practicing what I preach, I am certainly practicing what I preach after reading this book for the 27th time, I think. And it's like every time there's something I catch and it's not perfect and there's something that needs to be tweaked. But the bottom line is it has to be released to the world. And as I was before I had submitted it over to the publisher, when I was really in the place of doing my final rough edits, my final laying out of the book and making certain that it had a good flow, I kept going back through and changing things. I kept going back through and adding to chapters and removing from chapters and adding to stories and subtracting from stories. And my husband said it best. He said, listen, if you don't quit editing, at some point, you're writing a totally different book than what you've written. So it truly is about progress over perfection and starting where you're at. Now, is my first book going to be a home run out of the park, amazing New York Times bestseller? From my lips to God's ears, I would love for that. However, the reality of it is just the fact that it may take me a few books to get to that level, but I have to be willing to start with what I have and where I am at. Now, that looks like starting with you. You are the most implemental piece to all of this. The action that you take in starting small, it comes down to you. And this is where you're going to do, you can call it whatever you want. I've seen it called all types of things. I like to call it a brain dump. This is where you are going to take your pen out, your notebook out, and you're just going to start writing. Who are you? Like, you can circle that at the top of the page. What drives you? Like, literally what drives you? Not what you want to say drives you, but what truly fuels you in the world. And this is because when you get into these things and when you get into the hard times, because trust me, it's not easy. It is not easy. Those of us doing this, we're not just falling face first into luck. We're having to take steps every single day to continuously step out and take the actions and start small. So we're going to talk about what drives you, what fuels you, so that we can hold on to that and it will keep driving us and keep fueling us when it gets difficult. So look at what pushes you and what drives you, and then also what fuels you. So meaning, what drives me to get out of bed? Is there a certain temperature that I need to make myself get out of bed? Is there a certain song that I need to get myself out of bed? Is there a certain process, morning routine, whatever it is that's going to drive you for the day, that's going to push you for the day? And then what fuels you? What is filling your soul up and keeping you going? You can call this, people call it their why, your purpose, whatever it is, whatever you receive that keeps you going. You need to get really intentional about what this looks like and put as much of that in your life as you can. So this is all on the brain dump, right? Drives me, fuels me, and we're just, whatever comes to mind, like your first thoughts. Is it a song? Is it a book? Is it a prayer? Is it a meditation? Is it an exercise? What falls into these categories? And then on the brain dump, we're going to go back to where we wrote out the ideas in our brain, in our mind, bouncing around inside of us. And we're going to write down what dreams are in your heart. Now, this is going to look like, taking the ideas that are in your mind. So if mine started out with, I felt like I was being called to speak into women and people and empower others, that was my idea that was in my mind. Now, what dream is in my heart that surrounds that? So my dream there is going to be hosting conferences for thousands of people to be inspired and empowered. Or maybe it is writing a book, or maybe it is starting a podcast, or maybe it's starting a blog, or maybe it's starting a nonprofit organization or a social enterprise, or being a preacher and serving your local church, being an evangelist, being in missions, whatever that is. So take the idea that's bouncing around in your brain of what what you feel like you're being called to do, and then let's turn that into that dream that is in our heart. Write all of it out. You guys, my dreams have multiple phases. My dreams look like, I would like to start a hat line. And I would like that to be a social enterprise hat company to employ traffic survivors. And I would like to provide business mentorship around the traffic survivors that are employed during the time period they're employed. And I would like to provide a residential piece where they can work and live in the same place. So really get intentional about this dream, about the levels of it, about how deep it goes. Write it all down. If it scares you, awesome. The big, impactful things usually scare the crap out of us. So that's great. But fear does not belong here. So we're writing all that down on I need to come up with a prettier idea or name for it other than brain dump. Something, maybe you guys should send me an email with a little name that you would like me to refer to it as other than brain dump. Yeah. Send me an email. Give me your recommendation and I'll start referring to it by some other beautiful name. So we're going to also look at what strengths, we're still in the brain dump, we're still talking about it starting with you. And what are the strengths that you possess that will help you serve this space? I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you don't know your strengths, go take the Strength Finder test, go take the Enneagram test, talk to others around you to see what strengths you bring to the community around you. Write all that down, because as you're starting small, that is the easiest way to know how to take action. When I started volunteering with the aftercare home where I mentor survivors and teach a business class at, I went in and I knew my strengths at that point. I had done some personal development and I knew what I had to offer this organization. So I went in and I said, my strengths are that I am a speaker and I am a mentor. Those are where I excel. Not that I wasn't willing to start smaller than that. I just needed them to know this is what I have to offer. This is how I'm best going to serve your organization. Now, we're also going to have to dig in while we're talking about all of this action being surrounded around you and starting with you. We're going to have to look at what holds you back. All right, because this is where you're going to realize as you've gone before through the process, you may have gone through all of this process before, but the one thing that has kept you from starting small and kept you from taking action is whatever lies within what's holding you back. So once we can decide what's holding us back and we can break through that to the other side, then we can truly start small and take action. So I want you to write down what you're afraid of. I did this. I in last week's episode, in episode 75, over anxiety. That was the episode that I shared with you guys what I had put in my notes on my phone one evening when I was laying in bed, worried about publishing this book. And I wrote down, like, what are you afraid of? And I write down all the things I'm afraid of, because sometimes we think that if we name our fears, it's like there's a big bad boogeyman hiding underneath our bed at night. And if we name our fears, we think he's going to all of a sudden jump out and get us. I find the opposite to be truth. I find that when we name the fears, we call the enemy out of darkness. We confront it and we say, hey, what's up? You take the power away from it. You say, this is the fear. This is what I'm going to do to overcome it. And this is the step of faith I'm going to take on the other side of that fear. Because so much of obedience and faithfulness is stepping out in fearful obedience. It literally is not taking action without being afraid. It just means stepping through that. It means fearfully being obedient and fearfully stepping out in faith. So after we write these down, after we call them out, we're going to develop a courageous mind. We're going to create a courageous mind, because I don't believe that courage is a void of fear. I believe that courage is calling fear out and still taking action and still stepping through that. Exodus 9:16 says, I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. So this is how you're going to develop the courageous mindset. When you start realizing that it is a greater power than you. When you start realizing that the call on your life is greater than the fears and the anxiety and the trepidation that surrounds the call. That is when you are truly able to be fearfully obedient and start small. Now, the final piece to starting small is going to be realizing what you do not know, because a lot of times people want to pretend that they know exactly what they're doing and they're an expert. They've set themselves up as experts. They've faked it till they made it. However, when we are really honest about what we don't know, that's how we learn and that's how we gain knowledge, and that's how our starting small can start to grow and scale, and our businesses can scale, our books, our platforms that we have, our nonprofits, whatever it is that we're going to do. When we admit what we don't know and we work on gaining the knowledge, this is how we keep growing. So for starters, we're going to write down everything we don't know. Like, I don't know, for instance, when I started this podcast and I plugged my microphone, my cheap little microphone, into my computer, I could not make the sound come out of my computer after I recorded my episodes. Little did I know it was simply a sound output on my computer that I needed to change. I knew that I struggled with technical issues like that. So I researched everything that I didn't know. I leverage the free education that is out there in the world for you, because you guys, there is a ton of free information out there. You can go to Google, YouTube, And you can find videos and podcasts that will tell you just about anything that you want to learn. I have read a blog, watched a video, listened to a podcast for pretty much everything I've learned. And then you're also going to, there's platforms like Skillshare, which I talk about on this podcast, where you can do a 60-day free trial with my code, or you can sign up and you can learn anything you want over there. Like I have a class over there where I talk about the podcasting for dummies, like what you don't know when you very first want to start a podcast. I have that over there. But there are a ton of teachers with a ton of great resources where you can learn. And if you want to do that, you can go over to Skillshare and you can do Brandy Voth's Podcasting 101 class. And then there's a ton of other teachers that are great on that platform. You can also, so we have free information, we have paid for classes for low prices online, and then you can also hire a professional. Now we're talking about starting small. We're not talking about scaling an already established idea. So at that point, I don't necessarily recommend hiring a coach at a higher price. I have done business coaching. I have paid for it. It's a great investment in your business, but I don't think that is what we need to do when you're starting small and there's no revenue coming in and you're like at the very first idea stage. It's down the road. What I'm talking about as far as hiring a professional is, for instance, at our machine shop, I had to learn how to run an office at that time, and I had to learn data entry and bookkeeping and a lot of things that I don't know anything about. And I had to learn QuickBooks. So I Googled everything I needed to learn except for the things with QuickBooks that I did not know how to do. And I hired a professional. I brought him in. I paid him, I think, 2 days, maybe max, 1 or 2 days, to come teach me what it was that I did not know. Now, that being said, you can choose which way you want to go with that, but I just think that we need to decide what are the really important aspects. You might not need to hire a professional in the start small phase, because possibly your start small phase doesn't include things that you can't find for free on the internet or in a cheap course. Now, we are also going to learn how to, as we're looking at that list of everything we don't know, as we're looking at research, as we're learning how to do things that we don't know, we're also going to learn how to get help where we need help. Get help with what we can delegate and determine what we can't delegate. So what can you do that is specifically your gift? Make sure you do that. But if there's other things that you can delegate while you're starting small with this, do that. For instance, I record podcasts on Wednesdays. Wednesdays are my one day that I stay at home in pajamas and I work on course creation, podcast episodes, recording videos, recording podcasts, and my housekeeper cleans my house while I do that, because that is the phase we are in, because I have a platform to grow, and if we can afford to pay someone to clean our house, then we'll do that while I'm growing this platform. Maybe you don't have the funds to hire a housekeeper. That's fine. Delegate a chores list to your husband and your kids and get them to help you, because this is all part of starting small, taking action, and working with whatever resources we have at that time in our lives. And then another thing that I delegated, I determined what was the one thing about the podcast that I really could delegate, and how much could I afford to pay to have it delegated. Because remember, it's all like a growing process where it's not generating income when you first start out. So you need to decide on your budget if you have funds to pay for part of the process of creating what it is that you're trying to create. So I really hate editing a podcast. I enjoy creating the podcast. And I needed someone to help me edit that and then also do some social media strategy help. And so I decided that I could hire a high school kid and throw them some money. Thank you, Maddie, for being the most amazing assistant that is so underpaid in the entire world. And so that was something that I could delegate, and then I could continue to create the content and produce the content. And there's times that I do my own editing because she's in college now and she's busy, and that's okay. But for the most part, I'm able to delegate that to her. So you can apply this to anything that you are launching in life right now, whatever it is, be it nonprofit, business, ministry, leadership, blog, podcast, whatever it is. You can apply all of these steps to starting small, and it makes it much less daunting because you're not trying to build the entire ship before you sail. You're just saying that here I am, I'm creating a boat and I'm working to keep this boat afloat, and then we will transition up to a ship one day. But start small, you guys, because otherwise you're just not pursuing everything that is out there for you to pursue. You're not following your purpose, you're not being obedient, you're not following your call. So if there's any way that I can help, I would love to help you. If there is questions that you have, you can email me personally, Brandy at the-powerproject.com. You're going to want to get your hands on my book. I'm so excited about this book, and there are so many nuggets of takeaway action steps that you can apply to your own journey of purpose. And so all the questions about how do I get involved in nonprofits? How do I start a business? How do I X, Y, Z? Those are thrown in the book, in my story, and you can learn from it and grow from it, hopefully. I'd love to have you let me know what you need and how I can better serve you with this community. I hope that you enjoyed what you heard today. I do all of this to serve you because I love you guys. I love my audience, and I love empowering women. If you can do me a favor in return, I would love for you to do two things. One is I need you to go write a review over on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you listen to this, and give me some stars. I'll take 5. Let's get crazy, because that helps raise the visibility on the charts so that we can continue reaching more people with this podcast. And then the second thing that I need you to do is hop over to the website, the-powerproject.com, and you can sign up for the newsletter, or you can join the book launch team, and the launch is going to be open through March the 18th, and you can be part of fueling the momentum behind this book. I can't wait to chat with you next week, but until then, go out and live your best purpose-filled lives.